The blood in sample vial HF 2024-09847 just tapped back at me, and I need you to understand exactly what I mean by that before you decide to keep watching or click away. Because if you click away right now, you are going to miss the part of this story that I cannot explain. The part that a board-certified forensic toxicologist with 22 years of experience refused to put in writing. The part that made me request a schedule change the very next morning, and the part that is directly connected to a homicide prosecution that is currently before a grand jury in Harris County, Texas. So stay with me. Stay through every word of this, because what happened at 3:14 in the morning in that laboratory is something that I have been carrying alone for 3 weeks, and that I am telling you tonight, because carrying it alone has become more than I can do. I am a Toxicology PostDoc Fellow at the Houston Forensic Science Center, which means I have a PhD in analytical chemistry, and I am in the credentialing period that sits between the academic world and the professional forensic world, and on the overnight shift, because of the way the staffing of this facility distributes expertise across the clock. I am the toxicologist. Not supervised by one, not working beside one. I am the one. The analyses I run at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning go into reports that go to medical examiners, that go to district attorneys, that go to juries. And the weight of that is not something that becomes ordinary. Not even after 7 months of overnight shifts. Not even when the work is routine. And the night I am going to tell you about was not routine. The Houston Forensic Science Center is a facility designed for precision. Glass and sealed concrete and HEPA-filtered air and surfaces that resist contamination and instruments that detect compounds at concentrations of billionths of a gram per milliliter of blood. It is a beautiful building in the specific way that buildings designed for exactness are beautiful. And it is quiet at 3 in the morning in the specific way that a building full of instruments running their analyses is quiet, which is not silent. There is always the hum of the HEPA units and the cycling of the LCMS and the faint electronic presence of the monitoring systems. But it is the quiet of a building where the only sounds are purposeful and known, and I know every one of them, and I know what they should sound like, and I know what they should not sound like. And what I heard at 3:14 was not on the list of things that should be heard in that laboratory at any hour. Let me tell you what I do before I tell you what I heard. Because the what I do is the frame for the what I heard. And without the frame, the hearing is just a sound in a room. And it is not just a sound in a room. Forensic toxicology is the chemistry of how substances affect the human body and the chemistry of how those substances can be detected in biological samples after a person has died. When a person dies under circumstances that require investigation, when the cause of death is not immediately apparent, or when the circumstances suggest that something other than natural process ended the person's life, biological samples are collected from the body, blood and urine and vitreous humor from the eye, and sometimes tissue. And those samples are sent to a forensic toxicology laboratory where they are analyzed for the presence and concentration of substances that might explain the death, or might complicate the explanation of the death, or might transform the explanation of the death from natural or accidental to something that the legal system takes a very different interest in. The samples carry information. This is not a metaphorical statement. The biological samples and the vials in the sample rack on my instrument bench at 3 in the morning contain, in their chemistry, the actual molecular record of what was in a person's body at the time of their death. And the instruments I use to read that record are instruments of extraordinary sensitivity that can detect and identify individual compounds at concentrations that are beyond the range of any human sense. And the reading of that record is the most direct communication available between the living and the dead, between the person who died and the system that is trying to determine what happened to them. I hold that understanding every night. I have to hold it, or the work becomes only procedure, and procedure without meaning is how mistakes are made. The unwritten rules of this laboratory, the rules that are not in any training manual, and that the experienced forensic toxicologists who work this facility convey to new people in the quiet way that real operational knowledge is conveyed in professional environments, are three. The first is chain of custody above everything, which is the formal rule elevated to a principle, meaning you do not compromise the chain of custody for any reason, including efficiency or convenience or the pressure of a backlogged case queue. Chain of custody is what makes results admissible, and admissibility is what makes the work matter, and matching is the whole point. The second rule is about the samples. They are not abstract. They are not data. They are the biological remnant of a person who was alive and is not. And the person who is not alive had circumstances that brought their blood to your sample rack at 3 in the morning. And those circumstances matter. And you handle the samples with that understanding present, not as sentimentality, but as professional orientation. The third rule, the one I had to develop myself because no one told me this one, is about the silence. At 3 in the morning in a forensic toxicology laboratory, when you have been alone for 4 hours with the blood of the dead, the silence acquires a quality, a weight, a character that is distinct from ordinary silence. And in that silence, you become aware of the samples in a way that daytime chemistry does not produce. And when that awareness reaches a certain depth, you are in the territory where the third rule operates, which is this: pay attention to what the silence changes into, because the change is information, and in this work, all information is relevant. Case HF 2024-09847 arrived at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. Female decedent, 34 years old, found in her apartment in the Memorial Park area, unattended death. Circumstances per the medical examiner's summary described as inconsistent with natural death, but without evidence sufficient for immediate homicide classification. The toxicology request was for a full panel plus targeted analysis for anticoagulants and cardiac glycosides, which is the specific request that tells a forensic toxicologist something about what the medical examiner suspects, because anticoagulants and cardiac glycosides in combination are the pharmacological signature of something deliberate, something that requires knowledge to produce, something that does not arrive in a person's blood by accident. I began the preparation protocol at midnight. Logging, accessioning, sample preparation, all the steps that precede analysis, all performed with the complete attention that the chain of custody requirement demands. And by 1:30 the initial screening assays were running, and I was at my desk reviewing the case file summary, the circumstances of the discovery, the physical findings, the medical examiner's observations, and the reading of those circumstances at 1:30 in the morning with the woman's blood in the sample rack 6 feet from my desk was the beginning of the wait I am describing. The circumstances pointed at someone who understood pharmacology, who understood interaction effects, who understood that certain combinations of substances that are individually therapeutic are collectively lethal, and are lethal in a way that can look, to an untrained observer, like a natural or accidental death. Someone who thought they were smart enough. Someone who thought the chemistry would not speak. The targeted analysis for cardiac glycosides runs on the liquid chromatography mass spectrometry instrument, the LCMS, the workhorse of this kind of analysis, an instrument that identifies compounds by their mass-to-charge ratio with a specificity that makes it essentially impossible to produce a false positive, and that can detect those compounds at concentrations measured in nanograms per milliliter, which is the scale at which a deliberate poisoner might hope to operate below the threshold of detection, and which this instrument reaches comfortably. The LCMS runs a 45-minute analysis cycle per sample, and I had the queue set and the analysis running, and I was at my desk at 3:08 reviewing the preliminary screening results, and the preliminary results were confirming what the case summary was suggesting, were showing me the outline of something deliberate in the chemistry of the dead woman's blood. And I was building the analytical picture of what happened to her at 3:08 in the morning alone in the laboratory with the instruments running and the HEPA units humming and the LCMS cycling through its analysis. And the laboratory was in its 3 a.m. character, which is the specific silence I described, the weighted silence of this particular room at this particular hour. The tapping begins at 3:14. 3 taps, a pause of approximately 3 seconds, 3 taps, a pause, the same interval, the same count, the same character, the sound of a hard surface being struck against glass, deliberate and light, not aggressive, not random. 3 and pause and 3 and pause coming from the instrument bench 6 feet from my desk, where the sample rack holds the blood of the woman in case HF 2024-09847. I look up. I am looking at the sample rack from 6 feet away, and the rack is in the bench lighting, and the bench lighting is clear and even, and I can see the rack and the vials in it, and nothing is touching them, and the tapping is happening. I stand up slowly, and I walk to the bench, and I stand over the rack, and I look at the vials from 18 inches directly above, and the tapping continues. 3 and pause and 3 and pause. And I can feel it now. Can feel the faint vibration transmitting through the bench surface into my palms when my hands are flat on the bench on either side of the rack. A physical vibration in the bench material that confirms the sound is physically real and is not a product of a stressed mind at 3 in the morning, and I look at the vials from 18 inches and there is nothing contacting them. The glass of the vials is vibrating with each set of 3. Nothing is touching them. The tapping continues. I do what a scientist does. I work the list of explanations. I eliminate them one by one with the methodology that 6 years of graduate and postdoctoral training have made my default response to anomalous data. I check the HEPA unit on the bench, put my hand on its housing, feel its continuous fan vibration, compare it to the 3-tap interval of the sample rack. Not the same. Not the same frequency. Not the same pattern. The HEPA is continuous and the tapping is discrete and periodic, and the two cannot be confused by any instrument or by any calibrated human sensory system. I check the LCMS, measure its pump cycle frequency with my phone's vibration analysis app, compare to the tapping interval. The LCMS runs at 4.7 Hz, and the tapping interval is 0.77 Hz, and they are not the same. I go through every other instrument on the bench, every HVAC component I can access, every structural element, every possible source of a periodic mechanical vibration that could produce this exact pattern at this exact interval, and I eliminate every one. And I am standing at the bench in the laboratory at 3:21 in the morning with no explanation, and the tapping is still happening, and the woman's blood is in the vials. I pull the security footage on my workstation. For cameras, full coverage, all corners. I call up all 4 feeds for the period from 3:07 to 3:22. I watch all 4 simultaneously. The footage shows the laboratory, shows my workstation, shows the instrument bench and the sample rack, shows me at my desk, and then walking to the bench and standing over the rack. The tapping is audible on the audio track of the footage, clear, 3 and pause and 3 and pause, audible on all 4 microphones. And on the video, from all 4 camera angles simultaneously, nothing is touching the vials. I watch the sample rack on 4 cameras at once. The vials vibrate with each set of 3 taps. Nothing touches them. Not on camera 1, not on camera 2, not on camera 3, not on camera 4. The 4 cameras cover every angle of the room. Nothing is in the room that my eyes and 4 cameras cannot see. And the tapping is on the audio track. The tapping stops at 3:21. Mid-sequence, 2 taps, and then silence. Not the completion of a set of 3, but an interruption, as if something stopped mid-sentence, and the silence after it is the lighter silence I described earlier, the silence of a space that has released something, and I stand at the bench in the lighter silence for 9 minutes before I move. And when I move, I go back to my desk, and I sit down, and I wait for the LCMS analysis to complete. The results at 3:52 are the complete version of what the preliminary screening was showing me. The LCMS finds cardiac glycosides in the blood of the woman in case HF 2024-09847 at a concentration that, in combination with the anticoagulant levels also confirmed in the analysis, constitutes the pharmacological fingerprint of deliberate poisoning. Not accidental, not therapeutic dosing gone wrong. Deliberate. The combination, the specific compounds, the specific concentrations, the specific ratio between them, is the signature of someone who constructed a lethal pharmacological event and delivered it to a person who did not consent to die. The chemistry says this with the certainty of mass spectrometry, which is the closest thing to absolute certainty that analytical science produces. I write the preliminary findings into the case management system at 4:07 in the morning. I flag the case for immediate review, immediate reporting to law enforcement, immediate escalation. I complete the chain of custody documentation with the care that the documentation requires. I secure the samples. I sit at my desk and I look at the sample rack on the instrument bench, and the rack is quiet and the vials are still, and the laboratory is the laboratory at 4 in the morning, and the woman's blood has said what it needed to say. The case was classified as a homicide. A suspect was identified. The toxicology findings are the central evidence. The trial date is set, and I will testify to what the chemistry found and what the chemistry means, and I will not testify to what happened at 3:14, because the 3:14 is not the chemistry, is not the evidentiary record, is not the part of that night that belongs in a courtroom. But it is the part that belongs here, with you, tonight, because you stayed, because you are the witness I needed, and the woman in case HF 2024-09847 had something she needed to tell me before the analysis was complete, had something she needed confirmed, had a need to know that the person in the laboratory at 3 in the morning was paying attention, and I was, and the chemistry spoke. And justice is the result, and the tapping stopped when the analysis found what it was going to find, and I do not think that is a coincidence, and I am a scientist, and I am telling you it is not a coincidence, and I go back next week. Story number 2. The air in the evidence locker went cold at 4 in the morning and moved in a direction that the climate control system cannot produce, and something in locker 17 needed me to understand something that 11 years of law enforcement work had not prepared me to understand, and I am going to tell you what it needed and what I did about it, and what happened to the air when I did it. And if that sentence made you want to click away because it sounds too strange to be real, I need you to stay. I need you to hear the whole thing, because the whole thing is the only version that makes sense, and the partial version makes no sense at all, and you came here for the whole version, and I am going to give it to you. I am an evidence specialist at a sheriff's office in East Texas, and I have been in this work for 11 years, the last 4 on the overnight shift, which means I have spent 4 years alone in the evidence locker from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, managing the physical objects that law enforcement collects from the worst moments in the lives of everyone those objects touch. The evidence locker is a controlled access room in the basement of the sheriff's office, 2,000 square feet of numbered shelving and secure lockers, and a processing bench and fluorescent lighting and climate control and 4 cameras and a steel access door that requires both a key card and a pin to open. The room smells of packaging and old paper and something underneath those that never entirely goes away, the molecular residue of where these objects have been and what they have witnessed, and you work in that smell long enough you stop noticing it consciously and start carrying it out with you at the end of the shift in a way that has nothing to do with your clothes. I want to tell you what this job actually is before I tell you what happened in it. because people have a mental image of an evidence room as a passive place, a storage facility, a room where things sit in bags waiting for court dates. And that image is wrong in a way that matters for this story. The evidence specialist is not a custodian. The evidence specialist is the person who maintains the chain of custody that makes prosecutions possible and justice achievable, who manages the legal integrity of every object in their care, who handles those objects at all hours of the night with the understanding that the objects are not abstract, that the bag on the shelf is the thing that was in someone's hand when they made a choice that destroyed their life or someone else's, and that the handling of that bag has consequence. That understanding is the foundation of the work, and it does not reduce with experience. If anything, it deepens, and the depth is what the overnight shift makes most present, because in the overnight shift the room is quiet and the work is close and the objects have your full attention and you have theirs. And that last part is the part that new evidence specialists take time to understand, and that veteran evidence specialists do not explain in the language that would sound strange, but convey in the rules. The rules. The formal rules are the chain of custody rules and the access rules and the handling and documentation rules, the full legal framework of evidence management that keeps the judicial system functioning. These are non-negotiable and absolute, and I follow them without exception and have followed them for 11 years without a single chain of custody violation. The informal rules, the ones that the experienced specialists convey to new ones in the casual, direct way that serious operational knowledge moves through serious professional environments, are different and are what I want to tell you before I tell you about 4 in the morning. A woman named Sergeant Aldridge gave me the informal rules on my first week. She had been in evidence for 16 years, and she had the flat effect of someone who has seen everything in a specific domain and has made peace with all of it except the thing she is about to tell you. She gave me 3 rules. The first was the sequence rule. Process weapons evidence last in any given shift, not first, not middle, last. I asked why. She said because the other items are easier to handle when you know you are going home soon after. I understood this as psychological, as the weight of handling instruments of violence, and she let me understand it that way for 3 months and then corrected me. She said the weight is not only psychological. She said the room feels different when weapons evidence is being processed than at any other time, and the difference is physical and is most pronounced at night, and I would know what she meant when I knew. She was right. The second rule was the documentation rule extended. Write in your personal log, not the case log, everything unusual you notice, every sensation or observation outside the routine, every change in the room's character that does not have an obvious procedural cause. She said the case log is a legal document with legal language constraints, and the legal language does not accommodate everything that happens in the locker at night. But writing it down keeps it from being only in your head, and only in your head is where it does damage. I have followed this rule for 11 years. The personal log has things in it that I have never shared with anyone, things that the room has produced on overnight shifts that the legal language cannot hold. The entry from the night I am about to describe is 3 pages long. The third rule she gave me last and quietly, and with a pause before it that was not the pause of a person choosing their words, but the pause of a person choosing whether to speak at all. She said, "Do not separate items from the same crime scene across the room. Keep them together, same shelf, adjacent lockers, as close as the physical constraints allow." I asked if it was a cataloging efficiency rule. She said it was not. She said it was a comfort rule. I asked for whom. She said for whoever needs it. The door of locker 17 was cold in a way that steel in a 68-degree room should not be cold. Not the ambient metal cool of a surface that has equilibrated to the room temperature, which is a few degrees below ambient at most. The door was cold in the way a surface is cold when something significantly below ambient temperature is in contact with the other side of it. and I held my palm there for a 10 count, and the cold was through my hand and into my wrist, and I took my hand away. I stood in front of the lockers for a long time. I looked at locker 17 and I looked at the east wall, and I thought about the third rule, the comfort rule, and I thought about the knife in locker 17 and the victim's clothing in shelf unit 9 at the far end of the room, and I thought about Sergeant Aldridge saying for whoever needs it, and I understood what she meant, and I understood it with a completeness that I could not have understood before this moment. Before the cold door and the heavy directional air, and the understanding was this: the knife was alone, and whatever needed comfort was alone because of how I had categorized the evidence, because of the standard practice, because of the perfectly correct procedural decision to separate the weapon from the other items, and the correctness of the procedure and the need of whoever needed comfort were in conflict, and I was the person who could resolve it. I pulled the assault case items from shelf unit 9. I documented every movement in the case log with the procedural language the case log requires. The standard evidence transfer documentation, complete and correct. I carried the items to the east wall. I assigned them to lockers 16 and 18, the lockers adjacent to locker 17, and I logged the assignments, and I placed the items in their new locations, and I closed the doors of lockers 16 and 18, and I stood in front of the 3 lockers containing the complete assault case evidence, all together, and I put my hand on the door of locker 17. The door was 68 degrees. Ambient. The temperature of steel in a controlled environment. I stood with my palm flat on the door for another 10 count, and it was 68 degrees throughout, and I took my hand away, and I stood in front of the east wall, and the air in the room was the air of the evidence locker at 4:42 in the morning, the air I know from 4 years of overnight shifts, the air at its baseline character, the heaviness gone, the directional quality gone, the room doing what the room does in the deep hours of the overnight when everything is in its correct place and the work has been done correctly and the people who need things to be together are together. I sat in the chair at the processing bench for 20 minutes after. I wrote 3 pages in my personal log. Then I finished the paperwork and completed the shift and went home. I have kept cases together since. Every intake, every assignment, weapons with the other items from the same scene in adjacent storage, and the room has been what the room should be. And the third rule is not a cataloging efficiency rule, and Sergeant Aldridge knew what she was talking about, and the victim of the assault was discharged from the hospital 6 weeks later, and the knife is in locker 17, and the room is 68 degrees, and I keep things together now, and the air is light. Story number 3. There is a video on the hard drive I am examining at 2 in the morning, and the video is of me sitting in this chair in this room recorded 6 days ago, and it came from a device with no connection to this facility and no connection to me, and I have watched it 19 times since I found it, and the 19th viewing produced the same result as the first, which is the moment at 17 minutes and 55 seconds where I watch myself turn and look directly into the camera with no memory of turning. And if you close this video right now, you will miss the part where I tell you what I found when I looked into the footage metadata and compared it to the surveillance system records and what those 2 things together mean. And that part is the part that made 2 senior colleagues go quiet in a way that people go quiet when they have an explanation and they do not believe it. So stay through the end, because the end is where the real weight of this is, and you need to feel the full weight. I am a digital forensic examiner at a law enforcement agency in Orlando, and my job is to go into the digital lives of people who are under criminal investigation and find what they tried to hide, which is a more complete description of what they tried to hide than people typically appreciate when they think about deleting files. Deletion is not erasure. This is the foundational fact of digital forensic examination, the fact that makes this work possible. The fact that the people who delete things they do not want found rarely understand in its full technical depth. When a file is deleted from a digital storage device, the file system marks the space the file occupied as available for new data, but does not immediately overwrite the data itself, meaning the data remains physically present on the storage medium in what the forensic tools call unallocated space, recoverable by the right tools and the right expertise for a period that ranges from days to months, depending on how actively new data is being written to the device. The deleted file is not gone. The deleted file is hiding, imperfectly, in the space between what the device admits to containing and what it actually contains, and finding what is hiding in that space is what I do at 2 in the morning alone in the digital forensics laboratory. The laboratory is a controlled access room on the second floor of the building, small, 800 square feet. My room in the way that specialized rooms belong to their specialists. Right-blocked imaging hardware, forensic analysis workstations, storage infrastructure, the full technology of a modern digital forensics operation. The room is mine from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I have been in it 5 nights a week for 3 years, and I know it the way you know any space you have occupied intensively over time, know its sounds and its light, and the specific quality of its 2 a.m. silence, which is the silence of a room full of running equipment and no people, the silence of active processes and absent human presence. The formal rules of this work are the evidence handling rules, the chain of custody rules, the forensic soundness rules that govern every action taken with every device, all documented, all defensible in court, all designed to make the results of the analysis admissible, and the admissibility of the results is what makes the work matter. I follow these rules without compromise and have followed them for 3 years without a single admissibility challenge to my methods. The informal rules are 3. The first is about the content. In 6 years of this work across academic and professional settings, I have recovered from digital devices the full range of what people produce and store privately, the worst of human behavior comprehensively documented by the people who engaged in it. And the first rule is that you examine the content without becoming it, which is the language senior examiners use for the psychological detachment that the work requires and that the work selects for in the people who last in it. You are a scientist reading data. The data contains human behavior. The behavior does not change you. This is the rule, and it is achievable, and I have achieved it for 3 years, and it is the rule I was following at 2 in the morning until I stopped following it at the moment I opened the video file. The second rule is about the environment documentation. Before examining any device, you document your workstation, the laboratory, your tools, the full examination environment, because the chain of custody of the examination environment is as important as the chain of custody of the device, and the documentation at the start is the baseline. At the end of the examination, you document the environment again and you compare. Discrepancies are reported. In 3 years, the comparison has never produced a discrepancy I could not account for. That is no longer true. The third rule is about unexpected files. You will recover files you did not expect to recover. System artifacts, software debris, the incidental data production of operating system processes. When you recover a file you cannot immediately account for, you document it fully before you do anything else, before you open it, before you analyze it, before you form an interpretation. Document the recovery state, the metadata, the location in the storage structure. Document first, interpret second, always. I followed this rule at 2 in the morning when I found the file, and the following of it was the thing that produced the complete documentation that I am going to describe to you. And the documentation is the thing that made 2 senior colleagues go quiet. The hard drive is a standard consumer hard drive removed from a personal computer submitted in an ongoing investigation. The investigation is active, and I am not going to describe its nature beyond what is necessary for this account. I am in the analysis phase at 2 in the morning, working through recovered video files in the sequence the forensic workflow specifies, and I am in the 4th hour of analysis when the recovery tool surfaces the file that I am going to describe. The file is in the unallocated space, meaning it was deleted and has been recovered. Its metadata shows a creation date of 6 days ago. File size is 2.4 gigabytes, consistent with approximately 20 minutes of high-definition video. The file name has been partially overwritten by the deletion process, and the recovery tool displays a fragment of the original name. A string of partially recovered characters that I look at, and then look at again, and that I sit with for a moment before I do anything else, because the characters in the recovered name fragment include a floor designation and a room number. And the floor designation and room number are the floor designation and room number of this laboratory, of the room I am sitting in, of the specific room where the device I am currently examining is currently being examined. I follow the third rule. I document everything before I open it. Recovery state, storage location, metadata, the full file name fragment including the floor designation and room number, all of it documented in the case record and in my personal examination log, a process that takes 11 minutes during which I am aware of the documentation's importance in a way that the ordinary importance of documentation does not produce. The specific heightened awareness of someone who understands that they are about to open something significant and who is making the record as complete as possible before the opening. 11 minutes of documentation. Then I open the file. The video is high definition and clear and well lit, and the lighting is the lighting of this room, these overheads, this specific combination of fluorescent tubes and equipment indicator lights that produces the light environment of this laboratory, and the camera angle is the camera angle of the southeast corner, which is where one of the 4 laboratory surveillance cameras is mounted, and the room in the video is this room. And the workstation in the video is my workstation, and the person sitting at the workstation in the video has my build and my hair and my clothing from 6 days ago, which I know is 6 days ago because I remember the clothes, the gray shirt. I wore it 6 days ago on my shift and have not worn it since. I watched 20 minutes of footage of my own back working at this workstation 6 days ago. For 17 minutes and 43 seconds, the footage is the routine of a person engaged in digital forensic examination, typing and clicking and leaning and sitting back. The ordinary physical vocabulary of this work seen from the southeast corner at the camera angle, I know from reviewing my own laboratory surveillance footage for administrative purposes. I know what I look like at this workstation from that angle. The video shows me what I look like at this workstation from that angle, and the looking is strange in the way that seeing yourself on video is always strange, and it is also completely coherent, completely accurate, completely the image that the southeast corner camera would produce of a person at this workstation. At 17 minutes and 43 seconds, I watch myself stop typing. The hands leave the keyboard and go flat on the desk, and the body becomes still with a completeness that is different from the stillness of a person pausing to think, is the stillness of a person who has become aware of something, and the stillness holds for 12 seconds, and then I watch myself turn my head slowly to the right. To the right is the southeast corner. The southeast corner is where the camera is. The camera whose angle this video is recorded from. I watch myself turn my head to the right toward the southeast corner camera, and the camera captures my face as I turn toward it, and my face in the footage is my face, and my face looks directly into the camera at 17 minutes and 55 seconds and holds the look for 4 seconds, and then turns back to the workstation, and the hands return to the keyboard, and the typing resumes, and at 20 minutes the footage ends. I pull up the laboratory surveillance system. I navigate to the southeast corner camera recording for the date and time shown in the footage metadata. I play it. The surveillance system recording shows the laboratory, shows my workstation, shows the back of my chair and my head and my hands. At 17 minutes and 43 seconds of the surveillance recording, the typing stops, and the body goes still. At 17 minutes and 55 seconds, the head turns toward the southeast corner camera. The face looks into the camera for 4 seconds. The head turns back. The typing resumes. The surveillance system recorded exactly what the recovered video recorded. The video on the deleted hard drive is a recording of what the southeast corner surveillance camera captured in this laboratory 6 days ago. The hard drive this video was recovered from was submitted as evidence in an investigation that has no connection to this laboratory. It was collected from a location that is not this facility. It was collected from a person who has no known connection to this facility, no employment history here, no access authorization, no documented reason to possess footage from this laboratory's internal surveillance system. The device was collected 2 days after the footage was recorded, meaning whoever had the footage had it for 2 days before law enforcement collected the device and deleted it at some point in that window. And the deletion was imperfect, as deletion always is, and I recovered it at 2 in the morning 6 days after it was recorded. I documented everything. I called the duty supervisor at 2:47. The supervisor came to the laboratory and looked at the footage and looked at the surveillance comparison and produced the silence I described, and then produced a rational explanation in the language of camera feed interception and network security compromise, a technical explanation that accounts for how someone could obtain footage from an internal surveillance system. The explanation is technically possible. I know this supervisor well. I know they did not believe the explanation they gave me. The explanation accounts for the footage. It does not account for why someone who intercepted this laboratory surveillance feed would record 20 minutes of me working at a workstation and then delete it 2 days later. It does not account for that at all. The investigation into how the footage appeared on that device is ongoing. The surveillance system has been audited, and the audit found no unauthorized access. The southeast corner camera has been replaced. The case with the video evidence has been appropriately flagged, and the chain of custody for the found footage is intact and documented, and the footage is now itself evidence in an investigation that I am not involved in investigating because I am a subject of it in a way that creates a conflict. I sit at this workstation every night. The southeast corner camera is to my right. I have not looked at it since the night I found the video, have deliberately kept my eyes away from it, have kept my attention forward and on the workstation and on the work, because I do not know what I was looking at in the footage when I turned toward the camera at 17 minutes and 55 seconds. I do not remember turning. I do not have the memory of the impulse, the sensation, the decision, the reason. 6 days ago at that workstation, I turned toward the southeast corner camera for a reason I cannot access in my memory and held my eyes on it for 4 seconds, and someone had a recording of it on a device that has no business having it and deleted it, and I recovered it, and now we are here. Now it is 2 in the morning, and I am at the workstation, and the camera is to my right, and the impulse to turn has come back. Has been back since I watched the footage the first time, and it is here now as I am telling you this. The pull to look to the right, to look at the southeast corner, to see what is there, to find out what I was looking at 6 days ago when the camera caught my face, turned toward it for 4 seconds with an expression that I looked at 47 times and that I am not going to describe to you, because the describing of it is the thing I am not ready to do. The thing I have been holding back since the first viewing. The thing that is the real weight of this story, which is that the expression on my face in those 4 seconds was not surprise, was not confusion, was not the expression of a person who has turned toward a sound or a movement without knowing why. The expression on my face at 17 minutes and 55 seconds in a laboratory I believed was empty was the expression of a person who sees something they recognize, something familiar, something expected. And I am sitting at this workstation right now, and the camera is to my right, and I want to know what I recognized. And I am not going to turn and look, and I am going to keep working, and I am going to keep working, and the camera is to my right, and I am not going to turn.